if I didn't do these things to work on myself during my single season, I honestly either one, maybe the Lord wouldn't have brought my husband when he did, or two, when he did bring him, maybe I would have messed it up. Hey, Powerhouse. Thank you so much for clicking this video. If it's your first time watching, my name is Alandria Powers, and I create Christ-centered content here on YouTube, just sharing my life, my lessons, my journey, just so that we can become the powerhouses that God has called us to be, all right? So today's video is for my single sisters. You know, those of you guys who are in your single season, you know, you're really pursuing after the Lord, but you feel this gnawing desire for a relationship, for your spouse to come. And, you know, and let me tell you, girl, I was there. I was in that season. I was in this place where I was like, you know, Lord, I just really want to pursue you. Like, you are enough. But like, I keep having this feeling. And I actually felt the Lord telling me I was going to meet my spouse that year. But I was like, is this me, Lord? Is this you? You know? And so one thing I just remember him telling me, it was seek first the kingdom and all things will be added. And so I truly believe when we lock in and we focus on Jesus and we focus on just falling deeper in love with him, he'll begin to shape your desires. He'll begin to mold your desires. And honestly, I'm not somebody that's saying like you wanting a relationship is a bad thing. I truly do believe that marriage is a ministry. Like, it's a calling. Let's say, for example, if your purpose is to be a chef, you know, you'll have this burning desire for food, like to want to go to culinary school. Whereas me, I don't have that desire to want to go to culinary school, right? And so it's different strokes for different folks, as the old folks would say. I want you to make the most of this season because I'm so grateful for my single season. If I didn't do these things that I'm going to share with you guys in a moment to work on myself during my single season, I honestly either one, maybe the Lord wouldn't have brought my husband when he did, or two, when he did bring him, maybe I would have messed it up. I might have, you know, I would have made it a lot harder for myself if I hadn't worked on these things and I hadn't optimized my single season. I really believe that the Lord guides us into the things that we need. And if you're watching this video, I believe that the Lord is guiding you and telling you, hey, work on these things. These are the things I really want you to implement and work on. If you do a lot of this groundwork beforehand, it'll definitely set you up for success in a courting and dating season, and it'll also help you to identify your standards. But let's get into it. I'm not going to preface no more. So number one, my number one thing that I want you to focus on in your single season is to focus on falling in love with Jesus. I'm from the era where it was kind of like, you know, you're my other half type vibes. And that's kind of how I always thought of relationships growing up. Like, it was like, oh, I'm not going to be whole until my husband comes. Or, you know, my husband is going to complete me. This relationship completes me. When that is not the case. Only relationship you need to complete you is Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ alone, okay? It is through the relationship with the Creator. You know, with the one who created you, the one that made you, the one that knew you ever since before you were in your mother's womb, you know, that knows all the hairs on your head, that's been there every single moment, that knows your innermost thoughts. It's only through relationship with him that you'll be able to know who you truly are. You know, you'll begin to know your purpose. You'll begin to see that he's the one that, you know, that defines your identity. Because so many people will get into a relationship, but we don't even know who we are. We don't know who our purpose is. We don't know what our purpose is. You're making somebody else your source. And as a human being, you know, we are all imperfect. So you placing your faith and placing all of your stock in making your source an imperfect human being is not a wise decision, right? Because that's not steady ground to stand on. Jesus Christ is your firm foundation. He is your firm foundation. He's the one that you can depend on. He's solid. He's without flaw. So he's a solid ground to place all of your weight on, you know, to make your source. So as a single woman, falling deeply in love with Jesus and coming to a place where I knew that he loved me, that he died for me, that he's here with me, that all of my sins are covered, you know, that all of my shame has been erased, that there's nothing that I can do that'll separate me from his love. And having that deep knowing in your heart, like an unmovable, unshakable faith in your heart that, you know, if nobody got me, God got me. If nobody got me, Jesus got my back, or no matter what happens in life, I know the Lord, all things are working for my good, because I'm called according to his purpose, because I love him. Because let me come at it from the other side, like being married. There will be seasons that marriage is not the easiest, right? And I love my husband. I have a great marriage. I'm grateful to the Lord. However, there are seasons, there are decisions that, may be made, or there are, conversations that may be had, and you're going to have to depend on the Lord to say, all right, Lord, I need your strength right now. But how can you do that if he's not your source? Where are you going to get your strength from? Where's the source of your strength going to come from if it's not from him? In a season where it might be tough, like I talked about, you may go through a season where you have a lot of death in your family all around you, and you and your husband might be grieving. Where's your strength going to come from if your spouse is weak right now? It's not just like, oh, like, we might get an argument. No, there's like, you're doing life with this person. There's a lot of different things that come with life. Falling in love with Jesus and having that firm foundation is so, so essential. And do the work now. Do the work now. Number 2 thing to work on while you're in your single season is to begin strengthening your obedience muscle. And the way you do that is you listen to the Lord, like when you're spending time with him and he tells you different things that you need to turn away from. Start turning away from those things in obedience. You don't know what healing, you don't know what freedom, you don't know what the Lord could be trying to protect you from on the other side of your obedience. Not walking with the Lord in full obedience, it could really hinder you. It really could. It could hinder you in a lot of ways. See, in March of 2019, the year that I ended up actually meeting my husband, like I said, that New Year's Eve service, I felt the Lord telling me that I was going to meet my husband. It was in the back of my mind. I really wasn't like obsessing over it. But, in that March of 2019, there were a lot of really hard and uncomfortable things the Lord had asked me to do. One of those things was to tell my family about an abuse that happened to me from childhood. And I'm like, why am I going to do that? I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. But I didn't realize how much freedom it was on the other side of that. There were things that he asked me to walk away from that was really hard. And I did it, and there was so much freedom that came and so much healing that came out of those things. Speaking of healing, number 3 thing that I did during that time, and I definitely recommend, is for you to go to therapy. I honestly think everybody should be in therapy at least at some point in their lives, because we all go through things. Like, we're being raised in a world by imperfect human beings, right? And so bad things, imperfect things will happen to us. It's the sin nature of the world that we live in. And this is why we place our hope in Christ, because we know that this world is not our home. This is not our final destination, right? While we're here, we do have to live with the consequences of being in a fallen world. And so there are a lot of things that, therapy can help you process. It can help you to figure out. It can help you to unpack, so that you're not carrying on the wounds and the burdens from childhood or from a past relationship or from this failure or that thing. There's so many things that, that you can unpack so that you don't place that on the next person or on the person that is to come. One of my things from childhood is like, I would get triggered by yelling. If we're having like an intense conversation, or if we're having like a passionate, I like to call it like a passionate conversation with my husband, at times I felt triggered thinking like he was yelling. But I had to recognize that that's not him. Like, I have to disassociate the two. Like, he's not this person, and this person is not him. And so I had to disassociate the two, but I wouldn't have been able to do that if I hadn't gone to therapy and did the work to be able to realize like, oh, this triggers that, and this happens when that, or like if you have insecurities, you don't want to place that burden of you having your own insecurities onto the next person. Now you constantly need validation from the person. And they're like, do you not believe me when I tell you this? Or trust issues. You may have trust issues from a past something, someone, a parent or a past relationship that you need to unpack so that, the first time your spouse, when your spouse comes and you guys are dating and they don't answer their phone, now all of a sudden you're like, oh, they're cheating on me because this person did that. And so that's why you have to go to therapy, to unpack and begin to realize like, okay, this is what happens when that happens. And this is because of this. And then you get to work to the root of the problem and begin healing those wounds, so that when your person comes, you're not just carrying all this extra heaviness and potentially ruin a blessing that the Lord has given to you, or making your relationship, your dating season, your marriage much tougher than it actually needs to be. I'm not saying like your single season is the end goal, like, the last time you can work on these things, but it's great to get a head start, and it's great to already begin doing the work. Because if you actually believe that the Lord is going to bring you this blessing, why don't you prepare? Number 4 is finding your tribe. I think it's so important to find your crew, or begin to develop relationships with people, and deep relationships with people. Your community that you can lean to in tough times, or that you can that can encourage you in the Lord, and point you back to the Lord. Let's say if when your spouse does come, if you guys are going through a tough time, or while you're in your single season, they can encourage you and remind you of what the Lord is telling you, and tell you, oh, I just studied this thing, why don't you study that thing? It's encouraging. We're not meant to be alone, and the Lord doesn't want you to be alone. No, He wants us to be in community. But yeah, I think it's just something so beautiful about just finding your people, like enjoying life. Like, you aren't just meant to do nothing and wait around until this person comes. Also, that leads me into the next point of number 5, working on your communication. And this gives you a solid framework of people to work on your communication with. Because when you actually have an intimate relationship, not just like a passing, fleeting, like hi and bye type of relationship, but like in deep relationships, there are going to be conflicts. There are going to be things that you guys don't see eye to eye on. And so having to figure out how to communicate, how to talk through different issues, figuring out what type of communication styles you don't like, different things like that. You can do that in those close relationships, whether that's with a friend, maybe that's your family. But number 5, I would say work on your communication, because communication is one of the most valuable assets in marriage. Honestly, if you can communicate through everything, like, you'll be in a good spot in your relationship if you have good communication skills. Think about it. Marriage is you have two people coming together, two people with two different worldviews, two different perspectives, and you're trying to be one. And so there's gonna have to be things that compromise or spread out. Like, think about my hands right now. There's gonna have to be things like, you're used to being like this. That can't work. So you're gonna have to, be flexible to come together. Right? And that's how, the way that you do that flexibility is through communication. 6, I would say definitely work on your finances. This is like something very, very practical, but work on your finances. I'm not saying you got to be perfect, got to be a guru, nothing like that. But, begin to figure out how to budget, come up with like a system there, begin saving money. I'm so grateful my husband was saving money significantly before we got married, because he was able to buy my engagement ring. He was able to, without having to get a loan or something like that. And he was able to, we were both saving, but different things like that on his end. He had to pay that upfront cost, and then we were able to pay for our wedding and different things like that. Because we were being a good steward of our finances before we actually even met each other. Also, finances is one of the main reasons, like, in the world that relationships fail. And so if you kind of have like, if you're just not like frivolous and are becoming responsible when it comes to your finances, it'll definitely help out when it comes time to get married, and comes time to become one with your spouse. I just wanted to throw like a little, very, very practical, but I am grateful that I was working on that, because if I was just completely aloof, didn't know how to pay bills, didn't know how to save money, I was just spending like 24/7, racking up credit card debt. That could be a lot coming into a marriage, My last point ties into what we talked about in the beginning about, falling in love with Jesus. It's really falling in love with yourself is my last point. I've heard it said before, like, if you don't even like hanging out with you, why would you want somebody else? Like, why would somebody else want to? I feel like that's a little bit harsh to say, but I think what that quote is trying to communicate is falling in love with yourself gives you a level of depth, a level of security in yourself. Depth, when I say, like, when you fall in love with yourself, you're sure of, okay, this is who I am. Here's what I'm passionate about. Here's what makes me, get on fire. Here's what makes me cry. Knowing who you are the other person, you can go deep in a relationship because you know who you are, and now you're able to communicate who you are and express who you are to this person because you know who you are, and you're confident and you're in love. You know, you actually like who you are. And then also that security because you like who you are, so you don't need anybody else to like you. And then that helps you when you're pick who your spouse is going to be, or sift through weeds of the people that aren't for you to find the one that is. If you are looking for validation in every single person that you meet, your standards become super low, and you're like, oh, I'll just accept anything because, I mean, at least they like me. When that is not the case, okay? Just because they like you doesn't mean that they are worthy of your time and your attention. And just because they like you doesn't mean that they're the person for you, that they're right for your purpose, that they're right for your life. When you fall in love with yourself, you begin to have better standards for yourself. You won't put up with just anything. You'll be confident to say, these are my non-negotiables and these are the things that I'm not budging on. And if you don't like it, I'm sorry, you must not be the person for me. And having that confidence only comes through one, being in love with the Lord and allowing Him to define who you are. And then you becoming so sure and so confident in who you are that you become immovable. And it's not in, oh, I'm confident because I have money, or I'm confident because I have fame, or I'm confident because, other people tell me that I'm great. So and my confidence is in what other people say. No, because all those things are fleeting. Money can come and go. People can like you today and not like you tomorrow. So the only foundation that's firm and secure is the Lord. And because He, seeing what He tells you, who He tells you you are, who He declares that you are, being sure in that is where your confidence will come from. Your confidence being in the Lord is the best place to put it. And so, those are my tips. I really, all of these things I did in my single season, and my dating season was very, very accelerated. And I'm not saying that it was all peaches and cream, but definitely doing these things helped me out tremendously. Like, if I hadn't done these, I'm telling you, I don't know if I would have got married, honestly, because I probably would have messed it up. I probably would have been a hothead. I probably would have needed so much validation and drove my husband insane and pushed him away, And so there's so many things like that. And even if you're dating, this is a great message for you too. But yeah, so I just want to pray over you guys before we close out. Thank you so much for clicking this video. If you enjoyed the content, definitely stick around. I just love us growing together. And I really want to see you become the powerhouse that the Lord has called you to be. It's not just who He wants you to be, it's who He's called you to be. And so He's calling you up. And I know that because you made it this far, you are serious about this thing. And so I'm just excited to hear and see all the things that He's going to do through you. So Lord, I just thank you. Thank you for this powerhouse that you led to this video. Thank you for just equipping them with all this information, Lord. I pray that they will not just allow these seeds to fall on hard ground or to be picked up by the things in life, Lord, but that it would be planted on fertile soil, that it would find good ground, and that it would take root in their lives, and that they would fall deeply, deeply in love with you and know who you are, so sure that they will become an immovable fortress, Lord. I just pray that over them. I pray that you would begin to light the path before them, bring their people to them, and we just love you and we praise you in Jesus' name.